a massive update today from Eli Lilly on their conference call about their Q1 2023 earnings. Huge updates for Mounjaro. So stay tuned. If this is your first time here, please hit that like, hit that bell, and hit that sub so you get all the notifications that you need to get when we bring you this great information. So let's jump right in to the conference call. So just, you know, some Lilly related stuff, not super Mounjaro related, but you know, their first quarter, they took a big hit with the cessation of the COVID treatments. So, you know, not stellar profits, but that kind of overshadowed some really big growth in their non-COVID treatments, led largely in part by Mounjaro. So kind of getting into the news about Mounjaro from this call, there was a lot about the copay savings card, kind of peppered in with some of the other information that was in there, but really all the copay card conversation focused around the changes that they made and how that increased the amount of users that were using Mounjaro for type 2 diabetes only. So that card was designed to shift people who were not type 2 diabetic away from benefiting from the savings card. And this was just also overall designed to move people towards paying more out of pocket for their scripts to drive profits on Mounjaro. So that's not necessarily new information, but the big breaking news for Mounjaro in this call was the release of the SURMOUNT-2 phase 3 results. So in these results, Lilly reports that they met the endpoints on all their key and secondary endpoints. They met their goals on all those compared to placebo. And this study was in obese patients with type 2 diabetes. And so if you are a type 2 diabetic and you have been a slower loser on Mounjaro compared to your peers that are not type 2 diabetic, this study is going to be of super interest to you. So if you'll recall, in the previous studies done on Mounjaro, weight loss was somewhere in the ballpark on the 15 milligram over 72 weeks, somewhere in the ballpark of like 22%. In this study, on 15 milligrams, folks lost about 16%. So a big dramatic drop in weight loss over that 72-week period in obese patients with type 2 diabetes. That's compared to 13% if you were on the 10 milligrams. So a couple takeaways there. Obviously, if you're type 2 diabetic and you're obese, you are going to likely benefit, based upon the results of this study, to be on the 15 milligram dose of Tirzepatide of Mounjaro. 86% of folks achieved at least 5% weight loss. That's not necessarily big news, versus 30.6% of people on placebo that achieve that 5% weight loss. So obviously showing that, you know, the addition of Mounjaro was definitely helpful versus placebo for everybody across the study, no matter what their end results or weight loss was. So some other interesting information is they kind of built on that and touched a little bit on why that is. Why do type 2 diabetics lose less weight on Mounjaro, on Tirzepatide, and on incretin treatments in general, as shown in other studies previous to it? Well, other medications that they're on, diabetic medications that can lead to weight gain, insulin sensitivity, so insulin resistance being a big thing, and we've talked about that on this channel, gender, and then variations in somebody's glucose control based upon their own genetics and their own condition. So this is actually in line with what Lilly expected in these results. But for me, as a type 2 diabetic who has been a slower loser on Mounjaro compared to my peers without diabetes, this is a really affirming result in this study for me. And I'm sure that a lot of you probably hearing this feel the same way. As far as side effects, similar to previous studies about Mounjaro, GI side effects, most of them popped up when they were escalating doses. And what's really interesting is in this study, more people quit the placebo because of side effects than Mounjaro. And that was 13% using 15 milligrams of Mounjaro stopped because they couldn't tolerate it, where 14% of people stopped using the placebo because they couldn't tolerate it. So very interesting information. Another huge breaking news, so kind of moving on past that study, another huge piece of breaking news for Mounjaro is that the fast track that they have on this rolling submission for Mounjaro for obesity is going to, the submission of all that information is going to be completed in the coming weeks. Now, what's really interesting about that, kind of jumping down in my notes here, so bear with me. What's really interesting about that is they also said later in the call that they will be using a priority review voucher. Now, what this means is the FDA grants these priority review vouchers to these drug companies where they can use them to kind of move the paperwork along, so to speak, right? So what this can do is once the submission is completed, it can reduce the paperwork time and the ultimate approval process that the FDA has to go through by up to 6 months. So the big news is that they will be using that priority voucher and priority review voucher, and they will be expecting the earliest possible time frame for that obesity indication to be the end of 2023. So sometime near the end of 2023, quarter 4 is the earliest that we can anticipate, but that is just around the corner. As we're almost to May, right? We're almost to the halfway point of this year. And so it's moving very fast. So super, super exciting news about the fast track of the weight loss indication of Tirzepatide. The EMA submission has been submitted to Europe, and they expect a decision to be made on Mounjaro in the first half of 2024 for our friends in Europe. So, a couple other things that they touched upon about their SURMOUNT studies with Tirzepatide. They've studied Tirzepatide now in over 5,000 people across 8 studies. They're testing right now in SURMOUNT 5, which is set to complete in early 2024. They're testing the 5 milligram of Tirzepatide versus the 2.4 milligram of semaglutide, which is the high end of Wegovy. I'll have to go back and take a little bit closer look at that to make sure that it was a 5 milligrams of the Mounjaro. I'm sure about the 2.4. I'm not sure why Lilly would go with 5 milligrams of Tirzepatide versus 2.4, but the only thing that I can think of is they know that that Novo Nordisk is also now testing I can't remember, 7.2 or 7.4 milligram dose of semaglutide. So they want to compare like doses. So I think this is kind of Lilly saying that the 5 milligrams of Mounjaro is probably comparable to the 2.4 of semaglutide, and so they want, to come up with the superiority of the lower doses of both medications. And I'm sure that there will be another test in the future to determine what the highest doses of both that are approved, how they do against each other. That will probably be coming in the future. So we'll do next week, we'll do on our live, we'll kind of go through some of the slides from this call, but I wanted to get some of the breaking news out today. That is a lot about, at least what was breaking, what was new information as it relates to Mounjaro and incretin medications and treatments for type 2 diabetes and weight loss. Now, another piece of cool information was that within these trials, they are testing various different devices to administer Tirzepatide. So the injector that we all get now is now being kind of put up against different ways to administer Tirzepatide. So that will be very interesting to follow as things move along. Noticeably really absent from anything that Lilly offered was any information on retatrutide. They did cover, which is their triple G, their triple acting, which I believe to be the real flagship looking, out 5 years into Lilly's future. I really believe that retatrutide will be their flagship incretin medicine that's used for weight loss, where tirzepatide will continue with the GIP to be their flagship treatment for type 2 diabetes. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. That's just a theory of mine at this point. They did talk about orforglipron, which is their oral GLP-1, which they don't expect to be as good as tirzepatide administered sub-Q or even any other GLP-1s in its class that are administered sub-Q, but they do expect it to be better than other oral options that are out there, which will be interesting to watch. So they're testing that right now against insulin glargine in obese patients and diabetic patients, and it's the largest and longest study that will be done on orforglipron, so that's kind of why they're starting there. But yeah, not much about the triple G, not much about retatrutide. They continue to talk about how they will continue to develop the incretin market, how Wegovy took off in a really big way for Novo once they got the supply chain figured out. I think also it took off because it's approved for weight loss, and Mounjaro isn't, and all of a sudden Lilly moved all their diabetic patients to having to pay full price. So they looked to other options in Wegovy. So I think that really kind of maybe artificially inflated Wegovy's, standing in a GLP-1 market, because it's the only one there. But once this Mounjaro tirzepatide is approved, I think you'll see a shift in scripts again of the semaglutide versus the tirzepatide. But time will tell on that. So I mean, not a whole lot of other breaking news baked in here. They did talk about, the fact that studies continue to show that if you stop treatment on Mounjaro, you're likely going to see a regression in your progress of your weight loss for most people. And that's largely due to the appetite suppressant. And they talked about how when your body gets into this mode of losing weight and you're kind of keeping this suppression down with the medication, your appetite's likely to come back with a vengeance very fast once you stop the treatment of tirzepatide. So they see it as a long-term therapy. I think they also kind of hinted at why they charge the same amount for 2.5 milligrams versus 15 milligrams. That's because they expect people to be on these long-term, and from a profitability standpoint, they want people paying the same amount to achieve their goals as to maintain them. So not a lot of other news that's new. They did cover some things that we have covered in previous streams before, but I won't put those into this video. This, obviously, not a deep dive into these topics, but just to give you an update on what was in there. We will be going into further detail next week. We'll do a live stream. We'll take some calls. We'll go deeper into some of these, but I wanted to get you the best information as quick as I could that's breaking about Mounjaro. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, could you hit that like, hit that bell, hit that sub? If you found it helpful, share it into the streams and the forums that you're in. That will help grow the channel out. Appreciate each and every one of you. You're the best part of this channel. Thanks for watching today.